that I didn't really have friends too much. I didn't like sports so much, and then like no one was into like the music that I was into. I was like struggling in terms of, and in high school I loved all the people. I had so many friends, and what happened was towards Hanukkah time I realized I started learning, and I got a great chavrusa, and then we started like our shir had a bunch of guys who we really got close, and we started learning and doing chazara on the shir, and it just developed and developed and developed, and we had like a whole chevra of guys who were really serious in learning, and I realized that that Torah learning is also about connecting to people. You look at these Daf Yomi shirs all around. They're a club. They're a team. Everybody has to be part of a team. If you're not part of a team, life is very, very difficult. You have to. Being part of a team means being bigger than yourself. When you're going to a Chicago Cubs game and you're a Cubs fan, you're a person bigger than yourself because you're connecting to yourself something so much greater. Obviously, the Cubs is a bad example, but like. I'll give you examples. When I go to Warman, I feel like a Breslauer Chassid. I feel like I'm bigger than myself. I'm not just living here. When you're part of a Daf Yomi Shir, you're bigger than yourself. When I learned Sipur Maisios in the Breslauer Shul with the Chevra there, who are all humongous Talmidei Chachamim, and I'm so embarrassed to sit around them sometimes. It's like wow, like this is a Chevra. Like there's something very beautiful about Torah that it brings people together. That and you're not using the Torah to have Chevra. It's a natural thing. That it's a very beautiful thing to. A lot of times this is not talked about, but in your lives, if you go to secular college and you go to like a shir, you're connected to those people. Like that's your chevra, that's your. And in Marshan Aleph, I became close with these people. One of them actually is a massive gadol right now. He was the one who was personally in charge of asking questions to Rav Ely. Rav Ely was alive. He passed away a few years ago, but he was in charge of asking the shas. He's like a massive guy now. Walks around with a long coat and a really, like a real Rabbanish hat, massive gadol. And I'm still friendly with him. Once in a while, I'll speak to him. But what's beautiful when you'll find this year that your friendship circles will be based on Torah. It's unbelievable for this year and for future years throughout your lives.
Permission from my fellow Rabbanim. So I went to modern Orthodox day schools for 12 years. After that 12-year stint, I didn't particularly care to be observant anymore. So I took some time off in secular college. When I was there, learning was obviously not number one on my priority list. But I started going to Chabad House. Eventually I started going to a Tanya Shir. Tanya is probably the seminal work of the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. Has a lot of mystical ideas in it, a lot of Kabbalah, and that really blew my mind that there were deeper reasons behind doing all the mitzvot, and there are reasons why we do all of the Jewish practices. And from there I started learning more intensely, and one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi B'Tzalel Naor, suggested that perhaps I should re-examine the basics. In other words, maybe you should learn through Tanakh. And so from there, I decided that really, in order to understand what Judaism was about, I really needed to go back to the basics and learn from the start off. So I started learning Chumash with Rashi, Tanakh, Mishnah, Gemara, Rambam, so on and so forth. And I found a work by the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, called Derech Chachma, which basically explains how a person can assess all of Torah wisdom and create an organized learning system whereby one could go through all of those books and constantly be reviewing and starting and finishing different texts. So I'm very invested in that system. I feel that it's really cogent and it works. And in addition to that, I feel it's very important that people learn things that influence them and that they find a connection to. Each person, the Gemara says, has a specific connection to a specific part of Torah. And when you learn that part of Torah, you feel it, you feel an enlightenment, you feel something very positive, and you really enjoyed it. So I very much enjoy learning anything from Jewish philosophy and Chassidut to Musar, character building, interpersonal relationships, and a host of other types of Torah. You're more than welcome to check out my makom, and I'm sure I'll give you any number of book suggestions over the year. But I think one of the most important things is that, when you learn something that really impacts you and allows you to look at the world from a different perspective and a higher perspective, or allows you to understand something about another person that you didn't understand and treat them with more respect or less judgment or more care, basically to learn things that really impact, and that's why it's really important to learn halakha. The Sephardim, Rav Ovadia Yosef, all the Sephardi Gedolim were very makbid, were very stringent about a person knowing what the law is and what to do. I've always been mesmerized by the fact that there are many people that are learning Tosfot and many Rishonim, so on and so forth, and meanwhile, they don't even know Hilchot Shabbat or Hilchot Netilat Yadayim. So it's so important to have that practical learning in there, but also, just to end off with, that a person should find something that they learn, that they feel it, and they feel the connection to it, and that's something that you look forward to learning every day, and it becomes a very vital part of your life. And to have that you look forward to learning something, that's like your little peace of mind, that's your little time with Hashem, your time to be able to grow. If you have that in your life every day, and you look forward to it, your entire life and your approach to Judaism is not just something that I do, but rather something that brings me meaning and purpose and tremendous enjoyment.
I didn't grow up religious. I say that because despite that I didn't grow up religious, my parents sent me to Yeshiva day school. So I was lacking maybe the observance at home, but Baruch Hashem, I had great exposure to wonderful mechanchim growing up. I went to North Shore Hebrew Academy elementary school, and that was the most wonderful experience that I could ever have hoped for. I was exposed to people who represented Torah, who loved Torah, and despite the fact that back then most of the school wasn't even from Shomer Shabbos homes, we just had a very positive upbringing. When I was in 7th grade, I told my rabbi that I wanted to be religious, observant, Shomer Shabbos, everything. He thought I remember seeing him. He was this angelic man from Brooklyn, who with this beautiful hadras panim, and he just looked at me and smiled. Said, "That's so wonderful." And I could remember, thinking he was saying to himself, "There's no way in the world that he's going to be religious." He knew my family, and there's no chance. And I told the brothers in the school, and my parents were not observant of the. And in any event, but I made the decision to go to Yeshiva High School. I went to Hank, and one of the questions you asked was your first connection to learning. So I always learned. I was a good boy. I kept the rules, and I enjoyed the studies. And through learning Torah, I decided to become observant. But I had this Rebbe in 10th grade, Rabbi Ely, who was very big into Musar. He would be he would always give Musar, and it was very easy to sidetrack him from the Gemara that we were learning, because he would love giving Musar. He would always be like, LLAG, live like a guy. And it was every, and I remember telling this to Rav Nathaniel one time, and he's like, "Who's the rabbi?" I was like, "Rabbi Ely." He goes, "This is my cousin." He was like, anyway, so Rabbi Ely gave us one. He did not let us come to class the first day unless we bought a set of Rambam Mishnah Torah. So I never heard of Rambam Mishnah Torah. I had to go to Brooklyn with my mom to pick up a set of Rambam Mishnah Torah. We never brought it to school. We never opened it up. We never learned it. But he said, "How could a Jew not have a Mishnah Torah?" So we had a Mishnah Torah. He told us, he gave us Musar, and he said that everyone should, after school, you should learn Mishnayos. So while everyone else was mocking, I thought he was serious. I decided, remember Lev Yeager? So Lev Yeager, he was in the class above me. He was in 11th grade, I was in 10th grade. We were on the same bus. We decided to learn Mishnayos after school. So after school, we would speak on the phone, and we did the Blackman Mishnayos. We would do a few Mishnayos on the phone. We'd be on the phone for 40 minutes. It lasted about 2 weeks until both of our sets of parents said, "You got to stop, clogging up the phone." So we stopped. But that was my first experience of actually doing something active on my own, which wasn't part of a curriculum, was pre-existing. In the end, I wound up, you'll hear the story another time, but I wound up deciding to go to Eretz Yisrael for the year. I went to a place called BMT, and that was it. Once from that point on, I was in love with with Torah and Judaism together, and they went together. My observance of Torah came together with the learning of Torah, and being a person who was a learner was a person who was an observant person. A person observant meant that you were a person that learned Torah. So for me, that was my connection. And in terms of chinuch, so again, it's another story, but the story was my first summer after my year in Israel. I was a madrich at Camp Mosheva, IO, and Rav Jake was in the other bunk, but I had his friends in my bunk, and they were a motley crew, and the Rebbe or the Mori who taught them just could not handle them. So at a certain point, I took over the shir, and I gave the shir instead of the Rebbe, and I loved it, and they loved it, and I had so much sipuk nefesh from giving shir. I said to myself, I could see myself doing this in my life, and through my educational efforts at Mosheva, I wound up falling in love not just with learning Torah, but with teaching Torah, and that's why I went into chinuch. That's a short story.
Shamai? Unlike Rav Boaz, I grew up modern Orthodox, but I was, I mentioned before, turned off from learning, from Gemara. Me and my friends totally despised it.
Rabbi Will used to say, "You got to be turned on before you're turned off." So he used to say. So the guys would say to Rabbi Will, "But Rabbi, you're pulling out the plug." Sorry.
You got to love it before you despise it.
Exactly.
So I was neutral then, according to that. Anyway, I think one of the things that I look back, and I can't take credit for it, but I think Hashem made me this way, was that I was very open-minded. Meaning I never dismissed anything. And the kids in my class also, I was friendly with everybody. I think I was well-liked by people, and I liked everybody. I remember different cliques. There was the clique of guys that were cool. There was a clique of guys that were the opposite. I was with everybody. And I remember a year ago, I think I sat right here also, they had this panel mentioning that the most successful guy in my class, from a secular point of view at least, he became an owner of he was a good friend of mine, and I met up with a couple of years ago, became the owner of a football team, an NFL football team. To this day, he owns the Vikings. One of my good friends from New Jersey owns the Vikings. And a guy that lived a couple blocks away from him went the other way. He embezzled, he wound up 10 years in prison, got 10 years in prison. And all the other kids were somewhere in between. But very few guys back then went to Israel. It wasn't like today that most of the guys, a handful of guys went to Eretz Israel. I remember my Rebbe telling me and a few other guys that he considers it a crime. He had a Yiddish accent, the way he said it. A crime. Can't imitate Rabbi Weil. But in any case, a crime not to continue, a crime to your parents that spent so much money sending you to Jewish school and not continuing your Jewish education. So I tried it. And I remember that I came to Eretz Yisrael also to BMT. They had a program for 12th graders. In the middle of 12th grade, they canceled the program after, I think my year was the last year. Out of 30 guys, I was the only one that stayed. But we came in the middle of the winter. It was cold in New York. There was a snowstorm, I remember. I had never been to California, Florida, Hawaii, like people go today. And I remember suddenly I get to Israel, and it's in the middle of January. It was 50, 60 degrees. It was sunny. It was actually, they said it was a very rainy and cold winter. You guys will see that. It gets cold here in the winter in Beit Shemesh also. But I felt that Hashem was smiling to me. And I also felt that I was exposed to Rabbeim and people that were into learning that were very nice and friendly. And I never really saw that before. I never really felt that I could be close with people that are involved in the world of Torah. That was part of being open-minded. I spoke to a lot of people, and little by little, I saw that when you start learning, I felt a certain simcha that I never had before. I remember people in high school walking around with these college, these books, trying to decide which university to go to and what field to go, and everybody, no one looked really like they really knew what they wanted to do. Back then, you had to either be a doctor or a lawyer or go into business. Computers was just beginning, and I didn't want to force myself into anything, so I started learning, and Baruch Hashem, I got into learning. I was very, very happy learning, and little by little, I started substituting. I went into chinuch. I remember one time I went back to visit I was in America for a few days. I went to visit my parents. So I dropped in on YU on I think like the second day of the semester in September, and unlike the beautiful sunny weather that Hashem gave me when I came to Eretz Yisrael, it was a disgusting, cloudy, gloomy, humid day. Everybody looked depressed over there. I said, "This is not for me." And I remember looking forward to coming back. I came back a few days later to Eretz Yisrael, and meet a lot of people. You see people are happy with the world of Torah now. I'm not saying that nobody should go to university. It's if you need to go, you have to go. But just know that when you learn Torah, you get to know yourself, and whatever you want to do in life, you'll do much better if you know yourself. Because the best way to know yourself is to learn Torah. You feel your neshama, you feel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you'll be matzliach whatever you do.
There any? You have a question? You want to start from the crowd? You have to start with Erez. Hand up first.
I know Rav Ely touched on this a little bit, but what was a sefer, not the Torah or not? What was like a sefer or like a specific author that you connected to early on that you still return to nowadays to inspire you?
I'm not going to answer this, but it's not about sefer, it's about people. If you notice, everyone talks about people. It's about, I know for me, it was like this guy, Tough Barry Kahn. He has his own Kol Yesharim now. He teaches like older guys everything. He was in my face every day. We learned Mesilas Yesharim. He was like a real coach. He was a good coach in Frisch. Don't. Books are great, and I'm sure Rav Ely will have a lot to say about books. But the ikar is people. Find your person that's going to be in your mind, like Yaakov, like Yosef had Yaakov in his mind, and Yaakov had his father in mind. It's the people.
As you guys don't know, I don't really like people. But there's I think for me, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan was definitely, a bedrock in terms of hashkafa and explanation of different mitzvot. I can't say that I go back to it as much because I'd rather learn the primary sources. But as everyone knows, my new sefer that I think everyone should read, it's not even a sefer, but the Charlie Harari book, Unlocking Greatness. Rav Mohamir Tashem will, being that he's friends with Charlie, will try to chop him. But of all the Sfarim that I've been learning, I think this one really addresses some key points about why we do what we do as human beings. And I think it's really important in this year for you guys to recognize what you really want out of life and what you consider success. And if you set yourself up in the right mind, framework now, that can continue throughout your life and you can go in the right direction. Or Rav Shamai was mentioning how his friends went in all different directions. But to really think about what's important in life, any sefer, that encourages you to think more deeply and to really address, what are my needs and what do I want out of life, I feel that those are really the key things to be thinking about.
Anyone else want to answer?
Safer? There's a lot of good Sfarim, a lot of good books. I think one of the most remarkable things is that the authors who wrote these Sfarim, the English books, let's say, any topic, these are people that where did they get the information from? They weren't looking up. They probably went through a lot of more traditional sources to write these books. Someone who wrote a sefer on laws of Shabbos went through a lot of Gemara, went through a lot of Mishnah. They went through the traditional sources, and the best thing you could really do is go through the traditional sources. Go through Tanakh, go through Mishnah, go through Gemara, go through Shulchan Aruch, go through Rishonim, go through Achronim. And when you're tired, so take a few English books, take a look at them, browse through them. The English books are like vitamins. It's like a vitamin takes the best of everything and compiles all the healthy things into one pill. Those are the English books. They're necessary, they're wonderful, they're great. But if you really want to feel a connection to learning, so the best thing is to try to go through as many of the traditional sources as possible. You guys can go through all of Tanakh. You all can do it. You can go through all of Mishnah. You can go through all of Gemara. You can go through all of Mishnah Berurah, Shulchan Aruch. You guys are all capable of doing it. A little bit every day adds up to a lot. Nothing every day adds up to nothing. Doesn't matter. You can do nothing all of your life, but you still have nothing.
No, when I was trying to think of which Sfarim, whenever I was asked the question, so the first came to my mind is what Rav Mordechai said is, I think about, it's also like in college, you know, the course, which course to take. You look, who's the best professor, right? Who's the one that you're gonna enjoy the most? So I think about the Sfarim that I learned, and immediately I think about the Rebbeim that I learned it with, and then that's why I like that Sefer, because I had such a good experience learning with that Rebbe or that Chavrusa. That's so like when I remember like I learned Masechah Brachos my Shana Aleph. So whenever I open up Masechah Brachos, I have a good feeling. It brings back memories of the good feeling that I had when I first was empowered, or Nefesh Chaim with Rav Miller, or with my Shana Aleph Rebbe Mesil Sisharim. So like the different Sfarim I recall because of my experience that I had the first time. But of course, for me, Chumash, you know, every single year going through the whole process of Chumash, that's the go-to sefer to go back to always, and to always see new insights and new lessons in life from that sefer of Sfarim of Chumash.
Is there a question from the crowd? Let's actually Shai first, actually. Shai.
Do you feel like you push yourself as far as you can push? How do you think you can push yourself a little bit farther to rejuvenate your love for Torah?
Your love for meaning
For the learning, like every day.
You're asking how to stay inspired?
What do you do when you get burnt out?
Yeah, basically the question, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, in terms of handling 1 degree burnout and stay continuously inspired. How do you re-inspire yourselves to continue to be matmid?
So for myself, I have a balance, as Rav Shamai said, of primary sources, of Tanakh, of Chumash, Mishnah, so on and so forth. Occasionally that may get dry if I'm not doing it with, you know, certain commentaries, so on and so forth, but to balance that, I have always like new books that I'm looking for and new information and something that I've never heard of before. So I think if you're constantly on, you know, the lookout for new things to learn and new things to explore, you don't really have the burnout because you're always learning something else. And the Torah is so vast. There's so much information out there. There's so much beautiful things to learn that the way that I personally push myself is constantly finding new things to learn, new things to experience, new levels of understanding in some of the things that I thought I understood, and looking at them very differently.
built into the year. There's a cycle. You know, every Shabbos you have a break. You push yourself. Thursday night you push yourself as far as you can go, and then you have Shabbos. You have Shabbos to relax. You should learn on Shabbos also, but you have a built-in break. There's Bein Zmanim, which happens 3 times a year, again to give you that natural break, so that you're not burning yourself out entirely. But when you need a break, so you take the break. You push yourself, right? You have to be honest with yourself when you really need the break. But you take a break. You lie down for an hour, for 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, and you get back in. It shouldn't be. The problem is that what do you do when you take the break? And does that take you away from where you need to be? But I think there are enough natural breaks that a person shouldn't experience too much burnout. And I agree with Rav Ely. If you have, you should always have something in your learning schedule that gives you a certain special sipuk hanefesh, a certain special satisfaction in your learning that gives you fuel for your ruchnius.
I think a very important message in terms of burnout. Don't be so nervous when you get down. It's like I used to get so nervous every time my kid says, "I'm leaving the house and I'm not coming back and I hate you." Like, oh my God, life is over. My kid doesn't like me. That's it. Call the foster homes and like every time you get into a fight with your wife, like there's like the epic thing. Like you just like as you mature, as I mature, I should say, like just let it go. Take your burnout. Watch some great clip on YouTube or whatever it is. Hopefully kosher. Something like that, and then take it in a bubble and let it go. Don't wrestle, as the Baal Tanya says. Don't wrestle with mud, because then you get muddy yourself. A burnout, okay, let it go. Don't worry. Don't get nervous. Don't I don't believe in God, and I don't know why I came to Yeshiva and there's all the ways, and I'm not going to get all depressed. And it's a horrible, like a cycle of depression. Just like laugh off the burnout field, play, but whatever it is, and say this is part of my life, being not excited. You take a marriage. How much are you really excited about being with your wife? And I don't tell my wife this, but how much are you really excited, like those romantic moments? How much does that happen in life? Very little. Like, don't make Torah into like some romantic love relationship. Like that you have to like, oh, I love this piece of Gemara. Like sometimes I can't stand it. I try to learn a certain Yomi thing. Sometimes I can't stand it. Like, I'm like angry at it. Like, I'm like, hey, just read it. I'm a worker, and that's it. Tomorrow maybe I'll like it better, maybe not. Maybe I'll have one chance to really love Torah. But you don't have to. You don't have to make Torah into some romantic thing. It's a part of our life that we're workers and we're part of it. Whether you love, some days you love it, sometimes you hate it, sometimes you're power about it, sometimes you don't feel it. Just because you don't feel like being with your wife, it doesn't mean that you don't have to be married anymore.
Shamai, do you want to?
2 minutes, 1 minute. I remember also when I was younger, when I was single, I was into learning. I used to learn till about 2 in the morning, and wake up at 6. And you can imagine after a while you do get a little burnt out, whatever. One of the things that I've been doing on and off, mostly on since, Baruch Hashem, I have the opportunity to walk every day. I walk a little bit. Just getting here, I have to walk from one bus to the other. And sometimes I try to walk as much as I can, and it gives you time to air. It gives you an opportunity to air out a little bit if you're pressured. Someone gets on your nerves, whether I've mentioned your wife, or your kid, or your friend, or your roommate, or whoever it is. You walk, it calms you down, calms your nerves down, and then it gives you a different way to approach. I remember once when I was a little depressed, I remember my Rebbe, Rav Ephraim Palakov, told me there's a street in Yerushalayim in a neighborhood called Talpiot, near Talpiot, very industrial area. They have a whole strip of garages there, one after the other. He told me to walk there and just watch what people do during the day. And I remember when I was tired from learning, I looked at people. They were schwitzing, they were sweating, fixing cars, one after the other. Like, I'm not joking, 50 garages. Watching them pounding on the metal and everything. And I said, Baruch Hashem, I can't wait to get back to the air-conditioned based medrash and to learn, and I have no reason to complain.
I usually don't add much, but just in terms of adding what Rav Boaz said. Sometimes you could do something, like you need to take a break. Sometimes you take a break, you do something that's not so beneficial for you that can actually pull you away more. Another thing is just sticking to the routine. Even if you're burnt out, it's important to continue to do, like don't stop going to Minyan now just because I'm burnt out. Don't stop going to share, don't stop doing what you're doing. Okay, try to find something new within that maybe, or like, obviously for sure try to work out or go for a walk, but don't stop the routine. I think it's the most important thing you can stick to. If you keep the routine, okay, you'll get, eventually it's a cycle. You'll get inspired. It's going to happen again. But the more you get down and then you just lose the whole structure, it's hard to just get back into that again. So it's remember that, because just the same way you can fall, you continuously fall, and then you have to figure a way to how to continuously get back up.
Yeah, when I said go for a walk, I meant to come back afterwards.
Take two more questions, 2 final questions. Scott.
How does one decide what one should learn?
When you're
Specifically Gemara? Someone just said Gemara. That was you, Josh?
No, that was Josh.
It was like a ventriloquist.
Okay. It's pretty easy, actually, when you're in yeshiva, because you have a full schedule. So the question is, you have a schedule, and then you stick to the schedule. What to decide to learn in the extra time. If you're not sure yourself, you can speak to Shana Becca, speak to Rebbe, speak to Madrichim, and when you hear an answer that you like, that it feels good, that it makes sense to you, so do that. The bigger decision is what to decide, what to learn when you're not in yeshiva. But in yeshiva, it's pretty much laid out for you, like a set table, right? Like it's all there for you. And it's up to you to use the time as best as possible.
I'm very opinionated on this.
That's fine.
I really think that a person needs to know the basics. I have serious issues with yeshiva bachrim that don't know Rashi and Chumash, that have never even finished Chumash, don't even know what the names of the 24 books of Tanakh. I think that there is a set basic information that everyone should know, and if you don't know that, you're really kind of missing the big picture. I think halacha l'masa is very important to learn as well every day. I think the famous story is also that depending on where you're coming from, some people say it in the name of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, some people say it in the name of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that some people came and asked them what they should learn. They only had a half an hour of time to learn every day. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter answered they should learn Musar, the Rebbe answered they should learn Chassidut, and when the Talmidim asked, why would you tell them to learn that only in a half an hour, the answer was, if they learn that, they'll see that they really have more than an hour to learn every day. So I think that, just like you have a healthy diet, hopefully, and you have to eat, everything that's required to have the proper nutrition, I think also a person has to learn intelligently and build a structure so that they have the basics and also what they need to remain spiritually vibrant and attached and, moving up the ladder every day within one's learning.
We'll take a final question. Yeah.
So going into Gemara, let's say there's someone that's mediocre or whatever at reading Bikiyas, would you suggest for them to start going to Ian still? Meaning, if they are learning Bikiyas and their shear is Ian, do you suggest for them to stay there? Or do you suggest for them to go back down to Bikiyas if they don't fully understand how to read just the basic Gemara?
I rephrase the question also another way, is that should a person be jumping so quickly into Ian, or should they try to focus on Bikiyut, the more of the breadth of Torah before they actually jump into the depth of Torah? Any perspectives?
I think that you need a Mizgeret. You need a framework. And whatever Mizgeret, whatever framework you're in, you need to try to understand what it is that you're learning. If you're learning, if you try, and you try, and you try, and you're there for a month, and you really don't get what you're doing, and you feel like you're not using your time well because you're in a discipline which is not appropriate for you, where you're holding right there. And there's another framework which is much better for you, that you can gain much more, then certainly you should do that. There's some people who need to work on the basics until they start the e-learning. And depending on the Rebbe of an Iyun Shir, some students can start learning Iyun even when they don't have so much knowledge, because the Rebbe is so good at giving the whole picture, and they're able to really understand what they're doing. But the bottom line is, wherever you are, if you don't understand what you're doing, then it's not like you're totally wasting your time because you're involved in Talmud Torah, but you're not using your time the way you should be.
Just add, if you want to pick up reading skills, the best way to do it, the Aramaic, of course, is difficult. A lot of times people make this mistake during Chavrusa time. I went through the Gemara once. We went through it. We're finished. Where the truth is, you went through it once, but if you want to feel and know the words without thinking, when someone says to you shalom, you don't translate what shalom means. You know it means hello. You don't think, oh, shalom means hello. If you take a Gemara that you've gone through once, and then do it again, a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time, and a 20th time, after doing it so many times, you won't have to translate the words in your mind. You'll know what they mean by reading it. If you do a daf of Gemara, 2 dafim of Gemara, 3 dafim of Gemara like that, you've already picked up a significant percentage of Aramaic words that appear in all of Shas. Just a few dafim of Gemara, you'll be surprised, and then it'll get easier. So the best way to pick up the vocab and the skills is by going over it again and again and again. And there's no, I'm not joking, go over it 50 times. Chazal said go over it 100, 101 times. Go over it 1,000 times. Do it 1,000 times. Do it 50 times. Do it 10 times. You'll know what the words mean without translating. And then you'll be able to concentrate on the deeper levels of what the Gemara is saying.
And we thank the Rebbein for participating in the panel course. Again, these are, as always, whenever we have a Yom Yin, it's just to really open up, the